This week on Media Delta. Most giant robot anime and manga, like Gundam and Mazinger Z, are quite rooted in the more soft science fiction realm. However, sometimes you come across a series that tries to replicate what having a giant, massive robot in the real world would actually be like. Mob Police Patlabor is probably the pinnacle of those kinds of series. This series was the brainchild of a group known as Headgear that was a collaboration between several different types of creators so that all involved would own copyright of what they produce. While the series started out as a manga, several animated adaptations were also made, the first one being a series of OVAs referred to now as Patlabor: The Early Days. We have looked at one of the games that was based off Patlabor and found it to be not that great. But today, we find out if the other versions of the series hold up as we look at Patlabor: The Early Days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Media Delta. We got a good one this week. This is one that, this actually might be one of my personal favorite anime that we're talking about today, because we're discussing
Patlabor.
Yes, Patlabor, and not Patlabor like I've been pronouncing every single time I've said it.
Me as well. I understand your pain. It just flows off the tongue so much better.
Yeah. But yes, and we are specifically, there's a lot of Patlabor media. In fact, the studio that kind of developed Patlabor is a studio called Headgear, which is actually a 5-person group that was made specifically so that the artists who worked with, or that are in that group, had rights to whatever they worked on. And this covered like anime, manga, and obviously games, because we're talking about it in Media Delta. So, with me to discuss specifically the Patlabor OVA series, which is often dubbed as Patlabor: The Early Years, or the Early Days, excuse me. I have some people with me, so please introduce yourself in alphabetical order.
Hi, this is reporting to Lise.
Hi, I'm Norman Rafferty. I used to review anime for the magazine.com.
Hi, I'm TorpidTypist, and I'm here to watch hot, form-filling action and not mechs.
Yes. We are discussing Patlabor: The Early Days, which is a 7-episode OVA series that was put out through in the late 1980s, or late 1988, with one exception being released in 1989, specifically in June. So, yeah, this is kind of an interesting one. So, it's the group Headgear seems to have a thing about the stuff they make, in which they have stuff that basically it's like, oh, hey, we just kind of want to make, like, especially in this case, we just want to make like a police kind of drama, but we want to have some sort of thing, so we're going to give it like some super fantastical element. For example, this is a show that very much features very large robots that are sometimes in combat. But the thing is that it's not always focused on the robots. Another thing that Headgear produced is what is known as the Kerberos Saga, which, if you're familiar with the movie Jinro the Wolf Brigade, that is part of the Kerberos Saga, which is basically, it is a post World War II in which Germany won kind of a hellscape Japan. That it's about a police unit there, and kind of the drama that they kind of deal with, but also they have like super armor that gives them like this super menacing look, and it's basically the thing, like, if you've ever played Killzone and know what the Hellgas look like, that is the thing that Killzone basically run. But anyway,
basically, they did.
They did. Like, no, they did. Like, it is 1-to-1 what the Hellgas look. So yeah, we are going to follow our normal question format. So we are going to, I have 8 questions to talk about. So let's start in alphabetical order and then go in. So, Carnival, what's in one of these episodes that you'd want?
The fucking kaiju episode, of course.
Yes. So that is episode 3, the 400 million year old trap.
You want to talk about it because they won't.
They There's a fucking scientist that's learned how to recreate life from cells and that self-evolves to giant kaiju.
Cells from a
They're
meteorite, because panspermia theory was apparently correct in this universe.
Exactly! Which has implications that... There are implications that go on to this that are beyond any sort of thing. This would completely revolutionize the scientific world, but because this is that kind of show, we're not going to talk about that other than this episode, other than just, yeah, there's now just a giant sea monster wandering the Earth. Okay, sure.
Yep. I do want to point out, I do like the fact that just this last note on the Wikipedia page for this episode, last sentence for the episode description is, note, this episode plays homage to the 1954 film Godzilla, as well as other classic kaiju films.
No shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to say, real quick, the best part about that episode is that this thing had been wreaking hell in the bay. And then it comes up ashore with this person face, and he looks exactly like one of the members of the Unit 2, who's this huge man who look at the face that looks like it was chiseled from fucking granite. And they stare each other in the face for what they described as minutes on end before it just fucks off.
Yeah, and they never bring it up again.
They never talk about it ever again.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I've already I mentioned off mic that my favorite episode, it has to be the second one with Kanuka Clancy, the American.
Clancy.
Yeah, she's Japanese-born American woman who's been living in Hawaii. But when they introduce her, she whips off her shades, and in a dramatic shot, they show that she has slanted eyes.
Well, she's specifically she's a third-generation Hawaiian, actually, is the thing.
Right.
What they describe her as.
But it's specifically like they make a big reveal out of it. Like they show off that she's got these eyes. This is the only time since 1989 when they made this, or since, that I've ever like seen them make a big deal about. It's kind of like a joke on how anime characters have big round eyes. Round eye is a term people use for gaijin foreigners and that kind of thing. And that whole episode also, like has a couple digs in it. But Clancy is just like, it's one of those things where once you see that, like by the time you get to the kaiju episode, Patlabor, it has a lot of subtle jokes and digs anime culture in it. Like even its entire concept of, we're going to have giant robots, but they're going to be so immobile that we have to like haul them on trucks, and they can't get over sky bridges. There's going to be a lot of inversions of this, and there's a lot of Patlabor that you can pick up on. And that big reveal was just, after watching so much anime where no one ever points any of these kinds of differences out, or why, because that's something that confuses outsiders of why anime characters look like the way they do. So that's was I knew I was going to like Patlabor after I saw that.
It helps that Kanuka Clancy as a character is actually very good too.
It's also great because if you listen to the Japanese, like the original Japanese, and watch it subbed, when Kanuka introduces herself, she speaks in English, and they're very impressed by the fact that she speaks actually pretty, like the dubbing or the voice actress that plays her did a very good job of speaking. Like you would not, I would not say that she sounded like a person who definitely had lived in an English-speaking country.
The thing I admire about Patlabor is that when they need to take themselves seriously, they do. When it's a joke, kaiju episode, it's over the top. They very walking.
Oh, by the way, could you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, when Patlabor wants to be serious, they're good about being serious. And when they want to be silly, they can flip back. Not many anime can pull this off, and having this mix of when, things that that have stakes and we actually care about versus when it's going to be comic. Patlabor is just really, really good at that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Yes. What about you, Torpo?
This is a tough one. Because I could cop out and just say, yes, the two-parter that's really fucking good and really fun and gets a lot of characterization. That's really enjoyable. Because it's good. The whole show's fucking good. But I'll just say honestly, just dancing around that one, I'll say it was probably the school episode actually. Basically, one of the members of the labor squad had gotten a bit too gun happy and fucked up a bunch of property. So he took the whole team back for retraining because of this fuck up, because this is unacceptable. And over the course of the episode, spooky shit starts happening, and eventually you learn it was the team leader fucking with them the entire time.
Yes, the team lead in that in the group, Goto, is a really good character.
He's really good.
Just to point out, to go add on to Rafferty's comment about the mix between comedy and seriousness, I would like to point out the director of the OVA series, which one, Mamoru Oshii, who he actually got it for. If you are familiar with his later work, it is actually really weird the fact that he got to start out working on Urusei Yatsura, so a very much a comedy series, that he worked on that, and also some of the kind of the movies for that, which are very well animated. But yeah, he had also worked on some really weird anime, like live action movies as well. Like I mentioned, the Carnival saga, like the some of the live action movies in that series, like the Red Spectacles, are very interesting movies. And also he
But
go ahead.
say the big shit.
He has worked on, like I mentioned, General the Wolf Grade, which is most famous in the Carnival saga. Also he worked on Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, that probably one of the best animated anime movies ever. Yeah, he worked on that. And yeah, that is he is very talented. But yeah,
Apparently he has the he's notable for working on the first OVA, which was Dallas.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. I didn't realize that was that.
Yeah, apparently.
I think to go into the episode that I particularly care for, I think, yeah, I'll think I'll do the cop out, because I mean we've covered 3 of the 7 episodes, so yeah, the 2-parter, which is the SV2's Longest Day, is very interesting because like the show it at this point has been mostly comedic, with a few like tense moments, like very they like would last like maybe a tenth of the episode, if anything. SV2's Longest Day is mostly a dramatic episode about, oh, hey, there's a military coup going on. And basically it's like they actually get serious, and it shows that, yeah, when they want to get serious, they can get serious. Because it starts out with something relatively benign, where basically Asuna, who is one of the kind of the meant to be the main character. Oh, we'll go over the characters in the next question. He basically is trying to find a place to kind of live for a little bit during a holiday. I can't remember if it was New Year's or not, but it was
New Year's. Like you even see fucking what's her name, Izumi, eating mochi.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you see him going to the various houses of the people he works with, which it's like mostly comedic. But then it becomes immediately very uncomedic, where basically it's like, oh, there's like a nuke involved in like some conspiracy shit in like...
Well, so the thing is, it even starts off with a military labor gunning down a bunch of people on the highway with a fucking Gatling gun, and the military making off with that, as well as over the course of the episode, even during the comedic shit, they have various shots of the military moving various equipment through like subways and stuff. But go
on. So yeah, also that, and it has a really weird ending.
Oh, you mean not fucking concluding things at all?
Yeah.
Gonna just army cell.
Yeah, because it was really weird, because it ends in like a pastel freeze frame of the villain about to get his head shot off of a Chinese cannon.
After saying there'll always be another day or something like that.
Yeah, like at the pause, I'm like, did Osamu Dezeki work on this? Because it was like a very uncharacteristic thing. Yeah, that's like the one thing I didn't care for the OVAs. Like, okay, why? I wish there was just a little bit more.
Well, it's also weird because it's the 6th episode that they end that arc, and the 7th episode is completely unrelated. 7th episode, also really good, but completely unrelated.
So the thing about that I'm seeing, just going over the release dates of these, first episode is April 25th of 1988, then June 25th, July 25th, September 25th, basically, and then like November 10th and December 15th, all of 1988, and then the last one was released June 25th of 1989. So there was quite a bit of a distance.
Yeah. Some other notable things about that episode is it basically shows Goto's like the depth to his character, and really shows why he is the head of Unit 2, like why he's the captain. And you learn a lot about him, like the person committing the military coup was friends with him in college, various things like that. And also the the JSDF, Japanese Self-Defense, was the one staging the coup, a faction within them, and they stole a nuclear missile, a cruise missile, from the Americans, which is why the Americans work with Unit 2, so they can save face and hide the fact they had their shit stolen.
Yeah.
After Kanuka both threatens them with blackmail to help them, and then asks for hush money.
NYPD cop.
And
yeah, because if I can interject, what I really liked about the show, they name drop real world organization.
Yeah,
like a labors, but it really has that feeling that it's like a real. They wanted to feel like a real world, but what with military grade robots, what kind of controversies would happen around this, and that really makes this show stand out from a lot of other anime that doesn't even try.
Well, yeah, to be fair, to get into the background of it, Labor's originally construction vehicles, essentially, for more fine control and heavy lifting.
Right, hence the name.
Yeah, hence the name. And then eventually they got repurposed for military by basically slapping on more armor and making them, able to carry weapons. And
well,
the police also...
Oh, go ahead.
The police also had to, because of the increase of labors throughout the workforce, there became labor crimes. So the police force had to get their own labors, which were initially just repurposed construction mechs, just with a bit more tacked on. And that's why Unit 2 is notable for having the first specifically built for the police labors.
Right, that's even the joke behind the name. It's Special Vehicles Unit 2. So, yeah, so it's just, this is like the whole growing pain. I love it.
Yeah.
It's also really good because at one point they borrow a nuclear sub so they could launch a labor onto the boat that has the cruise missile. And literally the only person who could pilot the labor was the big guy because he was the only one who could handle the G's from the launch without passing out.
So I think we should probably actually go into... we kind of gone into a little bit of the setting so far, but the characters themselves, because this show has a pretty good set of main characters. So how do you feel about the setting / characters?
I mean, the setting itself is just one of those near future things, and I appreciate it because it keeps it relatively grounded, at least. The mech stuff always tries to be pretty grounded, like with things, not even just the mobility issues, like having to transport them by truck because they are too slow and too energy consumptive to actually bring that like that, like walk them there. But also things like the mech designs themselves. So like the labors are, the normal ones are like squat and ugly things that are purely functional, whereas like the police ones have a more sleek modern design specifically for appearances. But also like on the joints they have heavy cloth as opposed, like masking the joints rather than just having like metal and plastics over them, which I like. It all feels very functional. And as with the characters themselves, I think Noizumi honestly always struck me more as the main character.
Yeah, I think that most of the time you always kind of like, she is always the one that's kind of front and center. Like
she's essentially the point of view character, and she's actually really good and enjoyable and a lot of fun.
She is, I mean, in the opening of the OVA, because this does have an opening for all 7 episodes, except the first 6, because I don't think it's in the 7th episode, but actually I don't think it's in the last. Anyway, in the opening, she is basically the only character that shows up in the opening, and yeah, she always kind of came across as being the kind of the lead, because also she's just a really good character and all, just in general, who just wants to make sure that her labor that she labels Alphonse is really is fine.
Yeah, I mean, all the characters in Unit 2 are generally pretty enjoyable. Even the Rageaholic has his moments. That said, the 2 standouts are Kanuka Clancy, who, as I've mentioned before, is just kind of out of control cop. She does essentially whatever she wants and just does not give a shit and takes nobody's shit, more importantly. And she's actually just a fun character, who's pretty interesting. And repeatedly shits on the assholes in her squad too. And then there's Goto, who I think is really an interesting character because he has a lot of depth to him. Because he normally just seems as like this sort of deadpan, ridiculous guy who just doesn't want to put in much effort, but he actually really cares about his squad, and he, when he needs to be, is very keen and cunning and methodical when he needs to be.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's something. All right, so this anime is a perfect storm for many reasons. Not only have
You're cutting out,
but you also, I own American television had to be an influence on this, because in the 70s and early 80s, you had shows like The Streets of San Francisco and definitely Hill Street Blues, which was a show in the 80s that was a lot like this. You had a diverse cops, you had the captain who had to keep sanity, you had a gun maniac, you had another person who had a lot of domestic problems. You can see a lot of the inspiration that Patlabor draws from shows like Hill Street Blues, having, what if we had a bunch of cops and gave them all real unique personalities, but they're all dedicated to the job, like they're all in it to win it. So, and then you give it that kind of like, what if we put some of the anime tropes in there of like, okay, we'll play them a little over the top and we'll make this a little soap opera-y, and we're gonna try and keep them reasonably grounded. Like, Ota could have gotten a lot sillier than, I think, the fact that he's often using uncontrolled weapons that backfire on him, and also the fact that Noah, I think you're right, really shows up as a lead character, because I think everyone agrees, even the characters in the show, that Noah is usually the best person to handle most of the jobs, because she's a good pilot and doesn't have the phobia some of the other characters have.
I was gonna say, speaking of Noah, it shows later on that she can actually, she's not an idiot, even if she seems like an airhead. She's actually pretty smart, and like they even start commenting that she's starting to think like Goto by the end of it.
Yeah, there's actual growth. I think because that's the, like, instead of they make them like one every 4 weeks, one every week. So you have the same people working on it and a lot of consistency, and they have a little time to think about it. So they're willing to experiment with arcs and with some of the better mecha designs and that sort of thing. And Patlabor has one of the best cast. This is the kind of show, I think, that has a cast of characters that other anime want to have.
Yes.
So I have to second, like, Clancy and Ghost. I found the one. We have a cop that's being pushed out by which you have to do something fairly bad to get pushed.
To be fair, it's because she is very brazen in what she does. She causes incidents.
Yes, and then Goto, who is basic example of what responsibility towards the people and not just power tripping, which granted, this is a show about Japanese cops. Thus the difference between what structural problems between police and American police in Japan are completely different, where there's not the same kind of racialized police in Japan compared to America, but there are things, number fudging. Lots of number. Well, it didn't go exactly.
I mean, you see that in the last episode.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's a bit more complicated.
It is, but yes.
But yeah, so it's like things like his insistence, Goto's insistence on being prudent, like being thoughtful about how you use the weapons on the labor. You should never be unloading. You should be aiming to take it down in one shot to minimize any sort of problems.
Right. Like there's not a lot of spectacle where they're destroying a bunch of stuff. Often they're trying to figure out, how do we get this labor off the highway and into the city without demolishing them?
I mean, like the fight with the SDF, they literally finish without firing a single bullet. They just land on the ship and shove the gun through the bridge. It's really good. But yeah, no, it's fuck, where was I going? Yeah, no, it's good. And the thing with Goto at the last episode is important, because basically the thing they're referring to is a man stole a truck because he was in a panic because his wife was going into labor. And he thought it was just a normal truck, but joke's on him, it had a smuggled-in labor from West Germany that was going to be used by a bunch of terrorists. And he drove it away and managed to keep it away up to the very end, where he then got attacked by the company that made the mech, who were trying to keep it secret, and even going so far as to try to kill police officers over to keep it quiet. And he he went in front and helped out the police officers and saved their lives. So Goto basically said, you know what, we're gonna let this guy off of the hook. He just had a kid. He has a kid. He's got a family to take care of, and he just saved the officers' lives. And this was a terrorist plot anyway, so we can just pin it on that.
Yeah, it's that gradual like escalation. That could have just been a plot for a regular cop show. So, and you're right. The way the characters react to it, kind of like they're bending them. But Goto is about order and peace above all else. Yeah, I want to talk about the other the television show. Okay,
it's a good image.
Yes. Since so I have the a side stream going, the commenting, and I have found a really good image of Goto doing finger guns, kind of. Also, I do want to point out another thing for Goto that I like is a particular quote from. It was actually the episode where they go back to school when he's chewing them out, and he specifically brings up, "What do you think you're piloting? Great Messenger Z, Daigayo, or I guess Dangayo. Yes. So just bringing up other anime to say, no, this is not that.
God, Dangayo.
Yeah. So yeah, the characters are really good in this.
Also, like another call out from Goto about like excessive force is at one point they get a riot gun for the fucking mech, which just fires massive slugs that tear everything to pieces. He's like, no, this is too much. We will never need this firepower. Why would you have this?
I can never get over how when they make guns for the mecha, they're regular human guns just tripled in size. It's like, that's not how this works, guys.
Yep. No, it's really good though.
Especially since like revolvers have been in police use. I think they are actually still used to this day, because it is just a it kind of became like it is a emblem of Japanese police. Like they do not need anything more than a revolver. And it's just kind of become a symbol of the police. But yeah, just
for many reasons.
Yeah. So just kind of go over some of the other characters that have not gotten mentioned. So we have Asuna Shinotora, Asuna Shinohara, who is kind of otherwise meant to be, I guess, kind of the other main character outside of Noah. Who is basically, he is actually the son of a kind of corporate executive, a company that actually makes 90% of the labors in the world, apparently, according to Wikipedia. That is what the thing they said for that. But yeah, after he got into an argument, his father is like, maybe you should go work for the government to kind of get some experience. And yeah, so he's kind of not always, but he brings that up quite a bit, that he does not kind of want to do this, but he also is competent when he needs, so that's good. We also have the giant character, which is Hiromi Yamazaki, who he's from Okinawa. But yeah, his thing is just, he is big, but he is also very kind and very soft. Like
gentle giant, if you would.
Yes, like in the first episode, you see him, his lunch, he makes his own little bento kind of thing.
That's super cute, and I love it.
Yeah, the bento. That's the first time I saw a bento.
Yep. And like he is just very quiet, and like there was a thing in the last episode actually where they all start to argue, and you can tell that he is very not happy with everyone arguing around him. But also apparently he is the only one. He apparently at some point also can actually fire the guns from the labor without the use of a labor. Also,
it's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Also, once again, he's the only member of the squad who could withstand the G's of being fired from the nuclear sub.
And yeah. Also, the gun crazy guy is Isao Ota, who basically his thing is basically that he is really into guns and just being very angry. Like, it's great because at the time, so at the very end of the episode where they all go back to school and they are talking with Goto. And Goto admits that, like, yeah, I do this to do that. The entire point of this exercise is to point out that you don't always need your gun. And what do you think Oda does? He's part of the thing of being angry is him pulling out a gun. And he has learned absolutely nothing.
Well, yeah, the other big thing is he is meant to be a foil for Izumi.
Yep. And then the other character who's kind of not as prevalent, but we have Takeo... whoops, wrong one. We have... Mikiyasu Shinisi? Or Shinsi? I Shin-shi, I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically, he is one of the drivers of the trucks that bring out the labor. But basically, his gimmick is that he is married. That's basically it.
I mean, he's also pretty level-headed for the most part, except for that time that he tried peeping on the girls in the bath, because of course.
Yeah, because it came out in the 80s, so you have to. Yeah. Also, another character that is also pretty good. She is a kind of the captain for the other section, or for team SV2, like the other coordinate for that.
No, she's SV1.
SV1. So Captain Shinobu Nagumo, who is kind of not quite a foil to Goto, but he's kind of they work together a lot. And she seems like she was also really good.
There's also romantic tension between her and Goto.
Yes. That does not show up quite as much in this as it does apparently in
it gets a lot more obvious as the OVA goes on, but definitely not initially.
Yeah, apparently gets way overplayed in later things. But yes. So, those are the kind of the characters of this show. So, how about all these are kind of distinct episodes, but how do you feel like these episodes flowed? I think starting with Carnival?
They were fine except for episode 7 after 6.
Yeah. I think is more of it is a LVA series that is 6+1 rather than 7.
Right. And that's definitely the feeling that happened, because you get the ending of just, all right, we got the terrorist, we got him, and then we just, here's more goofy cop adventures the next time. It's like, wait, no, I want to know more about what did they do to the terrorists, damn it.
Yep.
So that was my just big thing, is like, well, great, you kind of just short-shifted me here.
All
right. For me, I've been praising how much I like the verisimilitude. How this feels like if this technology evolved, how would cops actually be? So I find that the weirdo episode of Genetically Engineered Monsters is the one that really just kind of is the outlier for me, because everything else, like, even though the tone might be off, they were still like stories that involved, here are people like doing construction or crime or military development. And the weird episode with the monsters it just stands out to me as like a filler arc. So other than that, I thought if you take that one episode out, all of them are very consistent, relatively with the tone and the visual look, which I think is an advantage of one team with a Nova. So yeah, everything but 3.
So personally, I felt it flowed actually pretty decently well overall. You could feel the passage of time over the course of you could feel the characters progressing, even if it is largely episodic, which I can genuinely appreciate. That said, I agree with actually both Rafferty and Carnival, is that 3 is an outlier, and that it kind of goes against the general tone of the show, which tries to be more rooted in reality, and then you have this kaiju episode meant to be a joke on kaiju shit, but just takes the piss out of the general tone of the show. And then, as Carnival said, the 7th episode is not good for the flow, but I do think it's a really good episode. But also, the ending of the episode before it was kind of open without any sort of real conclusion to it. And it just goes immediately into that, and it just feels really off-putting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of agree that while I like episode 3 a lot, it does kind of clash with the kind of themes of the series. But other than that, I felt like it was perfectly fine, and the flow felt really good. Like, nothing dragged down too long, and it was just as long as it needed to.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that, I know why they put it in the order that they do, because it is chronological in release. But I do kind of wish that in the future for OVA releases that they would shift so that episode 7 would be right at before the 2-parter, because I feel like it fits better there than anywhere. But yeah, other than that, I felt the flow was pretty good. So this is going to be a little tough to answer, because this has been dubbed a few different times and it's been dubbed by a lot of, or particularly there's 2 English dubs of this, depending upon when you watch this, apparently. Yeah, how did you feel like the voice acting was in this?
I felt it was very good, actually. So I think we watched the older dub, if I was to hazard a guess, given the fact that some voices from the newer one were a lot more...
Yes.
I guess, in a modern context. But the one we did watch, I felt actually was really well done. Izumi was a bit stiff, but otherwise I thought it was all very well handled. Like Goto's sort of very deadpan delivery of most everything was very well handled.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. The one that I was going to point out is Noah is definitely she does fine for the most part, but she does come like, especially if she needs to be like angry or something, it comes across as very reserved. Like she's trying not to be too loud. I have watched this. When I first watched this, I did watch it in dubbed or like in subbed. In the Japanese voice, I remember being pretty good.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen this dubbed. I've only seen it either subtitled. I'm old enough that I first saw these anime where they were second generation VHS tapes, and you had to get printouts that people circulated on BBSs to get a fan translation and read it at the same time you were watching. I mean, that's how old I am. So I don't have any opinion on the dubs, but I did notice this was Central Park Media originally, which is a little infamous. But I'm glad to hear that the if you watch the older dubs, I'm glad to hear they're pretty good.
And yes, it is Central Park Media that handled the TV and OVA series.
Yeah, it was the movies that were different crew.
Yeah, like for example, Goto was voiced by Roger Craig Smith in the Bandai Visual dub of the first two movies.
I can't wait to see Goto dress up in a Sonic outfit and take out the trash.
Too far.
But yeah, Carnival, what do you feel about the...
Like, without having old enough dub where it's like, this dub was probably made, if not probably before I was born, so it worked well enough without me knowing anything about the actor.
Yeah, for the only one, like I'm looking at the voice list right now for the Central Park Media dub, the only one that kind of comes to mind is actually Asuna's voice actor, Dan Green.
Really?
Yeah. I did not realize that when we were watching. Yeah, I think, I don't recognize any of these other names at the top of my head. But yes. It's nice that if you watch in either way, it's not bad. I probably would, if I were to watch this again on my own, I would definitely watch it dubbed or subbed. But you're fine either way. So we've kind of come across this on yet, but we've talked about this before. But just to kind of wrap this particular thread up, how do you feel about the fact that for being like a large robot show, how do you feel about the relatively realistic portrayal of the robots in the series?
Right.
Yep.
But it's not bad. It's a very good presentation, but I think like I mentioned before, when I think of robots, it's Gurren Lagann and G Gundam. So
yeah, you need to preface this by saying you like hot-blooded shit.
I love my super robot.
You
genre.
like super robot shit.
Yeah,
this isn't super robot.
It's not, and it's like, this is very good. I still enjoyed watching it, but it's just, it's not the thing that it's like what I come to love and watch when I'm watching it. It's a very well done, and how if we were ever to get over the weight problem of trying to wait and like just movement issues of trying to make giant robots on planet, this would probably be police and labor for just construction.
Fun fact, real quick, Carnival.
Yeah.
Alphon, basically the mechs used by Unit 2. I saw the numbers, and they weigh about 7 metric tons, fully equipped.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That still is heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard me talk about how much I love how realistic this is. And like, this is still the perfect storm, because not only do we have the 80s cop dramas, but you also have the decade of prosperity. This is before the bank collapse in the 90s. So Japan is riding high on, look at us, we make the stereos and the gaming consoles, we rule the world. So you've got that kind of gee whiz attitude going on where like everybody wants to figure out how the labors are going on. You have New York coming in here, and you have like German terrorists who want to steal labor tech, and you have the military who wants to see how how the SV2's mechs perform. Like everyone wants to steal from Japan. So you have this kind of arms race going on where they're treating it like it's a political thing. Like, we have to field study how these mechs work because no one really knows how this would be military grade yet, or there's still stuff to learn. And the fact that it's like an early development in this, really makes it stand apart for me from, like, say, you know, like, as much as I enjoy Gundam, Minotsky particles and all that kind of stuff, those are a lot more about heroes doing dramatic things with these robots. And when an experimental craft shows up, it's just in teleport or fast move or some other weird thing. Whereas this was just, how would real people react to this new tech? And we don't know anything. Like you said, with the shotgun, that's like, why would you make a riot shotgun this big? What were you thinking? So it really, it's a great deconstruction of the mecha genre, and I love it. I love it to death.
So personally, I love all robots. All robots are valid, every single one of them, even the bad ones. Okay, not the bad ones, but so I enjoy super robot shit again. But I am a huge fucking sucker for like realistic robot stuff like this, like how bulky and awkward looking the labors are, and how like purely functional they are for the most part, except for specifically this police one, which looks the way it does because of the aesthetics. Like they need that to basically show off to the populace and remind them who they are. But as opposed to the older models, which are just painted white and black, laborers, like construction laborers with a bit more heavy armor and shit, and like things like specifically the military laborers were much more heavily armored and sturdier built, so they could use the weapons they had. Like one of them was a Gatling gun from a fucking gunship. So later on, during the two-parter, one of they have an older police model of labor, and they try using the Gatling gun, and it literally rattles the mech apart from the recoil of the Gatling gun. And it's things like that I actually really enjoy and appreciate, or like Alphonse not being able to get over the overpass and them needing someone to lift him, specifically because they don't have that kind of mobility. And if they tried to get over the overpass on like foot or whatever, they would break it. And just shit like that, I just appreciate all of it, and I think it's really neat. Or once again, a weird little detail that I always like is, say, over the joints of the mechs to protect them, they have like a heavy cloth to keep things from getting in just like that.
Yeah, because one of the things like that made me get into this was just the fact that it is a realistic robot show. Like I really like when like series try and make things that are, let's see, science fiction, but actually make it kind of see like, okay, this is how it would actually. I really like when it's like that.
Yeah, and other things they emphasize are like ammo is very limited and also incredibly expensive, so don't waste it.
Actually, speaking of that kind of goes right into our next question. We saw some combat in the series or in the OVAs. Do you think that there should have been more combat involved in this?
No, actually, there didn't need to be. Like the thing about Patlabor is that the focus is never actually really the labors, and it doesn't need to be the labors. They're good, like set dressing, and they are useful for the scenes in which they act, but they are not the sole focus. The focus has always been Unit 2, the team, not the mechs, and I genuinely appreciate the show for being that way and being that.
Oh yeah, seconded. I like the fact that because like Dominion Tank Police, the next thing I might compare this to, and that is obvious. Whereas like the fact that they try to show off realistic environments, like where laborers would be, how labor related crimes would actually work, you know, like why would you want to bring a robot? Well, you might want to bash down and stake something, or terrorism, you might want to cause as much havoc as possible. I especially like the episodes where they're having difficulties moving them around. Like early, they don't necessarily know how to get them off the highway, or they're stuck in traffic or something like that. And so they have to figure out how, even though they're supposed to be like more mobile than a tank, this is still a civilian environment where we don't want collateral damage. And that's what really sells Patlabor. It's not so much that you're worried about whether the characters can solve the problem, but what's going to get ruined in it. And like you mentioned about the guns, it's also like, don't fire bullets because bullets go somewhere. They treat it like it's a cop show, and then they're all cops. And that, yeah, so definitely the fact that while they still had action and they still had stakes, the fact that they try to keep, you know, that limited really does sell the show. They make it very clear this isn't Gundam.
Actually, real quick, that reminds me, another thing that they show off is that the laborers do have an option for when they don't have gun or when they run out of ammo, and that's literally just a fucking baton, just a retractable fucking stick, and it's good because that's all it needs to be. because you have this giant mech swinging it around.
Yeah, it's there. The combat's there as it is. I'm not. Look, once I got it, once it's like, oh, okay. Once I got those percentages of police procedural to mech readjusted, it's fine. The last 3 episodes were enough for me in terms of just getting the mech combat fit.
Yeah, I also agree that I do feel like this just had the exact right amount. It is not something that needed to be, but it definitely, what was there was good, and that's perfectly fine. So speaking of combat, at this point there are many Patlabor video games. We've only taken a look at one, and it was the side-scrolling action game that was on the Famicom Disk System. So, for those of you that saw that, did that make you invoke anything of what you saw here?
I don't.
It was basically a pretty standard side-scrolling kind of somewhat actiony game. Like,
that makes me think like the best way to do a Patlabor game would like AI the Somnium.
So a visual novel.
Yes.
Or what was that? Metal Glory Slater?
Yes. Which is another visual novel. Yeah, I could definitely see a visual novel.
Yeah. I saw you play that Patlabor game, and that was terrible.
Yeah, it was not good. Of the Famicom Disk System games based on anime, it was probably the better one, but that's still not.
What a high bar after Dirty Pair.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that game was absolutely foul, and also it was entirely mech stuff. Gonna emphasize that right now. And yeah, Carnival was I agree with Carnival in that it'd probably be better serviced by something that could handle visual novel.
Yeah.
Because you don't need a bunch of mech combat or anything like that. It's not the focus. It's not the main point.
Yeah, and I think this goes into our next question, which is basically, do you feel that this OVA series or this series in general will be primed for video games? I would like to point out that there is a video game that does feature Patlabor that does have a really good concept to it that I believe is it's not an actiony game, but it is a game where you're moving around. Patlabor was one of the series that was featured in City Shrouded in Shadow, which unfortunately never came out over here. Game is a great concept in which it is basically you are a person on the ground during a kaiju fight. So yeah, a Patlabor fight is occurring, but you're just a civilian on the ground. You're trying not to die. And I think you're trying to report on it as well.
Yeah, you're a reporter.
You're also picking up weird energy crystals. It's a goofy game.
And yeah, just looking at the list of games that had also existed at that point.
Yeah, it's in fucking Super Robot Wars.
Oh, is it?
Of course it is.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
One of the installments of Super. Remember, there's a lot.
One of the installments, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I think it's OE.
That sounds about right. But it's a fucking mech show. It's going to be in Super Robot Wars eventually. It's the law.
It existed. Let's see if I look at the Super Robot Wars wiki. Patlabor is
doesn't list it on the wiki.
It doesn't list on the wiki because this wiki is bad.
Weird. It's a bad wiki.
Yeah.
Well, it's a wiki that explains all of the shit that appears in Super Robot Wars, but never.
No, what they did was they copy and pasted the Wikipedia article and just put it in there. So it has nothing to do with.
I mean, like, if you were into a video game, like if you're thinking of where they have to figure out that there is a rogue. I mean, this isn't the CVC, but a rogue operating system. Like someone's been hacking hacking laborers to go berserk. And I could see a game where half of it would be like going around the city and stopping berserk laborers. And then the other half of it might be crime investigation to figure out why this keeps happening. And you could do it like, I don't want to say LA Noire, but like a Grand Theft Auto or an open world where you're stopping crimes in the city while wandering around looking for clues. That might actually be fun and would fit the Patlabor motif of where you're trying to secure the peace while digging for clues. That might actually work too.
And then you bug out the trailer and clip through a building.
I'm looking at, so there's a list of Patlabor games that are on the Wikipedia page. So there's a game on the Game Boy. There's a game on the Mega Drive, the PC Engine Super CD, Super Famicom. There is a game on the PlayStation that is, I'm kind of curious what this is because it's just Patlabor Game Edition, which I'm looking at screenshots of this, and this looks like a really bad Virtual On clone. But also, there is one that I saw that it looks, based on screenshot, looks really interesting, and I'm trying to figure out where the hell my link went. but it is called Patlabor or Patlabor Comeback Mini Pato, and I recommend that you look up the if you just type in Patlabor PSP. This game has a really weird art style, and I really like it. It is basically, imagine that every character is like in this really not quite SD style, but kind of similar. Like all look like they are paper cutouts put on popsicle sticks.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. That's definitely a style.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I kind of want to see that. But anyway, that's not this. But yes, I do feel like you can do Patlabor games, but you can't do just an action game. That's just not what this is. This picture I'm looking at right here of what this is basically Goto right next to a big ass gun, and I think this might be my new background. But yes, this is, I don't think you cannot do this. Like, you cannot treat this like any other thing. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the definitive game. You should play it.
Yeah. But that is not going to be for a while. Also, I don't know if that technically counts. But anyway, I think it's time that we actually go about and actually rank this. So, we are going to rank this using our normal 1 to 21 scale. With 1 being what we consider absolute mastercraft, of which there is very little you can improve on to make, like, very little you can improve on a period with this, and 21 being absolute garbage, don't even bother, you cannot even get fun, like, riffing on it, it is just garbage. So, starting in alphabetical order, what number would you give this series, or this particular release of Patlabor, the OVA series? Okay?
I also would solidly give, I would think everyone, but it is from the 80s, so
you cut out and I didn't get your number.
Oh, I was gonna say I'd say it's also a solid 3. I mean, the only reason why two reasons why I wouldn't give it a 1 is it is from the 80s, so it is from the paint and trace era, so it doesn't like look as good, and I think it might be a little too. The animation is really good, but not as impressive as some others. So, that's why I'm putting it.
Turbo.
1. Okay, move on.
Okay. Okay. So we have 2 3s and a 1. I would definitely agree that this belongs in Mastercraft. Because the one thing, let me bring up what we have so far. So I believe we have 2 things in the essence list. Yes. So we have a 1 that is Die Hard, which is just the pinnacle of action movie. And at 3, we have Dirty Pair Project Eden. I could definitely see either of those. I could definitely see someone putting it at 1. I could also see it putting it at 3. Part of me wants to split the difference as a 2 because
I'm fine with that.
I won't complain.
Because the thing is, it's like, this is really good. But yes, it is. I see there are some things about this that I feel would kind of bump it down from being absolute perfection. Like that last episode's resolution is not that great. But other than that, this is just really good, and that anyone should watch it. Like, even if you're not really into anime, I think that this is a series that you can enjoy this anyway.
Cowardly.
Well, I can also see putting it a step. As much as I love Project E, I do think Patlabor is smarter and more accessible.
Yes, I could definitely. So yeah, I think 2 should go. I mean, we have more Patlabor stuff after this.
It's true.
Yeah, we got the movies.
Feed it directly into my mouth.
Yeah, I keep talking about the movie, forgetting which is the show.
Yeah. So there is 2 timelines apparently. Due to the weird rights hell that this series has gone in, apparently, there's been multiple people who have brought this out. The more recent releases of this, like, you can get this on Blu-ray and it looks really good. They actually have in the back the listing of the timelines. There's 2 timelines. You have the movie timeline and the TV timeline. And the OVA series is the first part of the movie timeline. So after that, you have Patlabor the movie, it's like WX, it's WX III, Patlabor 3, and then Patlabor 2 the movie. And then the rest you have the TV series, and then so I'll put Patlabor the early days. It's episode 14. This came out in I'm going to put 1988. Mamoru Oshii was the director. This was released in OVA. Oh, let's see.
We have
Criminal. We have Crime. This would be Crime. Yeah. And Tone. We have an 80s tone.
Yeah,
This is 80s.
it's
Definitely.
most fitting.
Yeah, as I keep bringing up, this is such 80s cop show.
And no content warnings needed.
Said music very
Yeah,
good.
let's
Charm,
see.
very good.
Yeah, so what do we want to give for charm or for music, charm, theatrics, or cinematography, theatrics, action, and art? So I do agree that the music is really good. The charm is like one of the key things about it. The cinematography is really good too. There's some really good shots in there. Also,
yeah, the art, I think, because the mecha design, city looks real, definitely.
and I don't know if I'd give thumbs up for not that they're bad, but for the theatrics and the action, I just don't think that's
not bad, but it's
The writing is very good, but the acting is...
Yeah, the acting's kind of... also, to point out another thing that is in 3, which is the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. So I would definitely say that I would prefer watching this over the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie as well.
I would really suggest that Patlabor is... When people tell you anime is good, Patlabor is like all... You can see all the anime, the jump cuts, the reaction shots, that sort of thing, is all done really well in Patlabor in a way that isn't cringy like a lot of other 80s anime have stood up. So if you were to show someone one anime of the 80s...
anything we want to call out for yay or nay?
Can I see the list again?
This list that I need to actually, put stuff in here that is
Yeah,
media
one day
specific.
you fucking update it. God damn.
I think I might do that this weekend.
You're killing me.
I would argue
Enemies are too spongy.
I would argue that Made with Abundant Love fits with, because especially with the formation of headgear, I feel if you put in that production history, I do feel like this belongs in here.
Yeah, you can tell they really loved me.
If I were to think, because it's like, I don't know if there's anything else I would call for nay.
Nope. It's perfect.
I mean, speaking as like an old timer here, I could see that if people didn't like the tropes of anime, like anime, they might be put off by those kinds of stylings in Patlabor, but I don't think that's a nay, per se of what we were talking about here.
Yeah. I think that might be good for that. I think this is good for Patlabor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely deserves being that high. It was very enjoyable.
Yes.
So yes, that'll do it for Patlabor, the early days. So before we close out, is there anything you want to plug, starting with Carnival?
Follow at.
Well, I'm Rafferty. I work for SanguineGames.com, and to celebrate this, we'll be having our own bleeding edge cyberpunk stuff on sale this week. Patlabor is awesome.
Fucking at TorpidTypist on Twitter, twitch.tv/TorpidTypist. And also, I'd like to plug the gaping hole in my ship from the mech that dropped in it.
Yes. So yeah, that is enough for Patlabor, the early days. So next week, we are starting to take a look at a bit of a longer... We're starting to look at longer series. And to start out, putting our first kind of series in the Resonance list, we are taking a look at Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which I started doing my watching for it a little early.
Great, what are you guys talking about?
Why are you so broken, Carnival?
Yeah, tune in for that one. That's going to be an interesting discussion. So yes, that's going to do it. So tune in for that next week. So yeah, again, thank you all for listening. Boy, howdy, we have something. This has been another episode of Media Delta. If you would like to view the entire list of rankings for yourself, you can go to r3.ldp.life to see the Resonance and Essence list that Media Delta covers, as well as the other lists that are covered by our sister show, Retro Rank Rhapsody. If you would like to watch Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can watch it live on Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on Twitch at twitch.tv/loadedpuzzlo. Or you can view any of the episodes anytime at youtube.ldp.life. If you would like to help with hosting costs, you can go to patreon.ldp.life and help out with a $2 or $5 pledge. If you would like to discuss this episode and any other episode of our community, you can join our Discord server at discord.ldp.life. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can follow it at Hazeltown Story, or you can follow me, your host, at Lolo de Puzzlo. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back for the next episode.